Just look around you. Do you see the love this? Joan Daley Uebelhoer, sister, mother, grandmother, friend, mentor, and much, much more. Each of us believes we knew the real Joanne. Each of us is right, and each of us is wrong. So any attempt to sketch the life of this giant encounters contradictions, conflicting notions of how best to picture her. Today, as we celebrate an amazing life and honor a humbling legacy, we follow her through a complex landscape of private self and public self. As we hear stories that resonate and stories that surprise, may we traverse this challenging terrain with as much grace and good humor as Joanne herself.
We were filled with the strong wine of mutual struggle. One joined, loud, and sonorous voice. We carried each other along, revolting, chanting, cursing, crafting, making all new. First Muriel, then Audra and Flo, now Adrian and Joanne. I feel like a lone pine remnant of a virgin forest when my peers have met the axe and I weep ashes. Yes, young voices are stirring now. The wind is rising, the sea boils again, yet I feel age sucking the marrow from my bones, the loneliness of memory. Their voices murmur in my inner ear, but never will I hear them speak new words. And no matter how I cherish what they gave us, I want more. I still want more.
My mother loved poems and songs and Broadway musicals, and every morning she would say to us, "Good morning, Mary Sunshine, what makes you look so bright? The last time that I saw you, you were telling me good night." But there was a special song that became a mantra, and we would sing it in the car and around campfires, and I asked her to stay with me to sing it because I can't sing it by myself.
And Mother said she wanted us to sing this at her funeral no matter how bad it was.
So if you know the words,
Help us.
help us, please. Beth and Claudia, help us. Slow down, you move too fast. You got to make the morning last, just kicking down the cobblestones, looking for fun and feeling groovy. Ba-da-da-da-da-da, feeling groovy. Hello, lamppost, what you knowin'? I've come to watch your flowers growing. Ain't you got no rhymes for me? Do-do-do-do, feeling groovy. I got no dates to do, no promises to keep. I'm dappled and drowsy and ready to sleep. Let the morning time drop all its petals on me. Like I love you, all is groovy.
But aren't you glad we found different careers?
Who did I hear say out there she almost missed another deadline? I'm so happy to see everybody here, and I'm so happy that the family asked me to read another poem that Joanne loved, When Death Comes. When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps his purse shut. When death comes, like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades. I went to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field today, and as singular, and each name a comfort, table music in the mouth, tending, as all music does, toward silence. And each body a lion of courage, and something as precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life I was a bride married to amazement, and I was a bridegroom taking the world in my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. Thank you. Long before she died, Joanne asked her daughter Carol and her good friend Leslie to do her memorial service, obviously seeing the difficulty of one person staging a memorial of both her family self and her community self. While she left the planning details to Carol and Leslie, she also thought that Carol might be too gripped by emotion to manage the microphone. Obviously, she was wrong. So she asked me to handle Carol's speaking roles. In retrospect, I think maybe she actually just enjoyed the thought of all of you Fort Wayne people chuckling at my Texas accent. But either way, how Joanne of her to have directed some key elements of her own memorial, but largely to trust her family and her community. Joanne left us with this perfect final snapshot of herself. But what she didn't do was make it easy. She packed more into one life than 5 ordinary people. Joanne was the oldest of 3 children of an Irish Catholic father and a German Lutheran mother. She was 2 years older than her brother Neil, who died tragically suddenly in the 1970s. And she was 7 years older than her dear sister Dort, who was her lifelong friend. She grew up learning from her good-natured father a deep respect for unions, antipathy for the British, and enduring appreciation for a good joke. Her mother, whose parents were deaf, worked for the county treasurer and taught at the state school. And from her, Joanne learned respect for diversity and education, and she learned excellent money management skills. Though she was very young, the Depression made a big impression on her. She recalled her father's buying a refrigerator to support GE's efforts to retain the union workers. Of course, the thing is, the family couldn't afford electricity, so they used it as a closet. On the day Joanne turned 13 years old, December 7th took on a meaning beyond being her birthday. She memorized the shapes of German aircraft so that she could spot them from the Lincoln Tower. And in later years, she often bragged that Fort Wayne was never the target of German air attack. Well, it is obvious to all of us that even Hitler knew not to mess with Joan Daley. Those who met Joanne as an adult may be surprised to learn that she was a model child. She did no wrong, and she never made waves. Let it sink in a minute, people. She was an excellent student, especially in science and math. She also participated in the newspaper, in yearbook, and in drama. Her amazing skills as an organizer were evident even then. After a math degree at Mount Mary College in Milwaukee, Joanne returned to Fort Wayne in 1950 and began teaching 4th grade and tutoring adults at home. One such adult student was a man named Joan Uebelhoer. And soon, tutoring didn't really define their relationship. Her father was very suspicious of Jim. He was another one of those German Lutherans. And when Jim would arrive to see Joanne, he would call out, "Well, that yap is here again." But in 1953, Joanne, the school teacher, and Jim, the air guard mechanic, married. After 2 heartbreaking miscarriages, Carol was born in 1956. 2 more miscarriages followed before Jim Jr. was born in 1959, Lori in 1961, Martha in 1963, and Patty in 1966. Education was always a matter of foremost importance for Joanne. Carol recalls falling asleep to the sound of a manual typewriter as Jo wrote papers for her biology master's degree. When family finances improved, one of Joanne's first priorities was to pay for Martha's and Patty's college educations, something she was very sad not to have been able to do for the older 3 children. And she was ever the consummate teacher. Even today, students from her very first class at Forest Park describe her as the teacher they never forgot, the one who took special interest in each of her students. And that reputation continued untarnished throughout her teaching career, whether she was teaching 7th grade at St. Henry, geometry at Bishop Luers, or women's studies at IPFW. She was invariably the teacher who cared for her students as people, who inspired, who brought out the best in them. She was also relentless in educating her own son and daughters. When they shopped, she insisted that the kids keep a running tally of the cost. And in the car, when they were on trips, she would call out math problems that they were required to work out in their heads. Now, Carol recalls that Joanne was sometimes frustrated if her children didn't have the same aptitude for math and science as she did. Once, when Carol reported an incorrect answer to the question of how much paint would be needed for a swimming pool of a certain size and shape, Joanne exclaimed, "You could fill the pool with that much paint." her saying it, can't you? Martha describes Joanne as being an environmentalist before there was such a thing. Among Martha's early memories is her mother's insistence on taking the family to see unspoiled places before they ruined them. Laurie mentions her admiration for the natural order of the universe. She recalls that on those family camping trips, she would carefully explain the natural world to her kids, pointing out weather patterns, teaching them about different kinds of sand on beaches, and helping them learn how to identify trees by their leaves and their bark. One of Carol's early memories is of accompanying her mother to burn trash at the back of the yard and discovering a garter snake on a large flat rock. Well, Carol was only 4, but that doesn't stop a natural-born teacher. And she took the opportunity to explain to Carol the difference between warm-blooded creatures and cold-blooded creatures. She had Carol sit on the rock to feel its warmth and imagine how the snake was taking that heat into its body. Well, Carol learned a lesson then. She learned about cold-blooded and warm-blooded creatures, but she also learned what it is to teach whenever the opportunity arises. And that's something Joanne always did. Speaking of those family camping trips, for which she always had every day fully planned, we must also mention Joanne's love of travel. Her personal budget always included travel as an essential item. That was not a luxury. Her frugality allowed her to visit throughout the United States, as well as Iceland, India, Ireland, Guatemala, the Galapagos Islands, and of course China. Jo loved to garden. She grew vegetables. She loved bulbs. She liked that long waiting period between when she hid them in the ground and when something actually came up. And she also planted lots of annuals every spring. And she always did it according to a careful theme. I love that story. For the relatively calm life of Joanne, the teacher and mother, the early 60s were watershed years. The Berlin crisis brought a renewed awareness of the world outside Fort Wayne, as well as activation of Jim's Air Guard unit. He was off to Germany for a year, leaving Joanne to care for 3 children under the age of 6. She did bookkeeping and tutoring at home. She planned meals a month in advance to stretch the military pay. She managed the funds and the house and the children, and at some point it dawned on her that she could do it all. And when that dawned on her, she also realized that she and women in the same positions were simply not getting the credit they deserved. So when Jen returned from Germany, they began attending St. Mary's. And the appeal of that particular church was its social activism. She was inspired by the church's interest in civil rights and economic justice. And she was absolutely certain that it was only a matter of time before her beloved church would turn its attention to the unequal treatment of women.
Yeah, right.
You may have noticed she miscalculated just a little bit. But so it was that she found herself a few years later meeting with her family to explain that she and some other women planned to attempt to distribute communion, which is a role permitted lay men, but not lay women. And she explained that they might not be able to go back to the church. And this was a big deal. This was not something she took lightly at all. She did, after all, love and truly believe in the church. But when she analyzed the situation and realized the choice was between justice and the church as it stood, she could not but choose justice. And her family backed her decision. How poignant that at Joanne's funeral mass yesterday, her sister Dort distributed communion. she had warned they did not return to St. Mary's or to any other church. However, a group of like-minded Catholics began meeting in each other's homes, where a sympathetic priest, Father McNulty, celebrated Mass with them. The women in that group began to be aware of feminism, which seemed to Jo a natural extension of the Church's embrace of civil rights. Soon other women, non-Catholics, began to meet with him. Jo reported at one point that Catherine Adamski was very frustrated with them, and she declared at one meeting, "Would you stop speaking Catholic? I can't understand a word you're saying." At the same time, Joanne's dissatisfaction with the patriarchy was rising. Her personal conflicts with her husband were growing as well. Her son, Jim, recalls the challenges of trying as an adolescent not to take personally her growing anger toward men. He has done a good job of it. We will hear in a little while about Jo's public involvement, public offices, both elected and appointed, Planned Parenthood, clinic escorting, women's studies, and so much more. For now, it's sufficient to note that Joanne did not wait for injustice to affect her personally before she stood up to it. But it is also true that whenever the course of her personal life steered into unexpected waters, she examined how that circumstance impacted issues of justice. When first one and then a second daughter announced that she was a lesbian, Joanne opened her eyes to the notion that lesbianism might be something other than a reaction against men. As a breast cancer survivor, she began thinking seriously about health care justice. How would this affect women who didn't have her privileges with respect to health insurance? And when the challenges presented by her Alzheimer's began multiplying, she became ever more conscious of the injustice of ageism. Inevitably, using her private experiences in her public work created tensions with her family. Jo was constantly confronted with decisions as to whether something was a confidential family matter or the basis for a speech, whether to attend a child's school function or a rally, whether something should be held in parental trust or shared with her friends, many of whom were her daughter's contemporaries. The decisions were neither easy, nor were they always made in the same direction. She regretted some, not others, but no one can doubt that she always acted with integrity based on circumstances as she saw them at the time. She hated appearing vulnerable, and her increasing need to rely on family for daily assistance pained her. At the same time, she rather enjoyed the opportunities to reconnect with her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren. Nowhere was this more true than with her youngest daughter, Patty, in whose loving care she felt safe and at home. It was probably inevitable that as she reflected on the meaning of life, and her life in particular, she would turn again to the force that had both awakened her sense of justice and caused her pain because it had turned away from justice, the Catholic Church. All of us who had joined her for years in criticizing, even mocking, the church, were pretty surprised when, during the last year, she would sometimes confide her fear of hell, her curiosity about death. Now, her old friend, Father McNulty, opined that God would never send Joanne to hell because she had it organized in less than 2 days. I suspect that only her sister was not startled when Jo wanted to see a priest near the end of her life. But I suspect that even Dort was surprised at the great peace that came to Jo after that meeting. There were parts of her that none of us knew. Jo began a rapid physical decline, and she died only 1 week later, surrounded by her family. In her last few months, she was sometimes unable to identify a dear old friend, but she never flagged in her political arguments or in her passion to understand the basis of misogyny. It didn't make sense to her, and Joanne did not like things that didn't make sense. She would sometimes forget where she was or how to perform familiar activities, but she never lost her sense of humor. Not long before she lapsed into unresponsiveness, she cracked, "You know what I think about Alzheimer's? Forget about it." She slipped away, but scientist and educator to the end, not before arranging to donate her body to the IU Medical School. So her teaching goes on. So here we are, with the sadness of another obituary for another giant of a woman. And yet, we can be certain that Joanne reached the end not having just visited this life, but having occupied it fully. The thing is, we know that the true history of a person is written in the hearts and minds of people she touched. And so we're going to have a couple of these recollections times during this service. And right now, for this first one, if any of Jo's family has a funny or a meaningful story or a recollection that evokes for you just who she was, please come to the microphone and share for a minute or two.
I think most of you know me. For one thing, I'm very short. My name's Deb Feller, and I have been involved with Joanne in one way or another since I was 19 years old. Lori and I went to nursing school together, and I was just this dumb kid off of the farm. And at one point, Lori said, "I'm going to run over to my mom's office and get some pencils for this test." We didn't have number 2 pencils. And so she ran over, and I said, "Well, where are you going?" She goes, "Women's studies." And I go, "I thought your mom was a feminist, not teaching home ec." I mean, I was really clueless. But our relationship carried on, and at one point, Lori and I were sharing a large farm home out on the Carroll Road. And the farmer that owned the place offered to plow and disc and rake the garden space there. And it was probably about 1/8 of an acre. And so Joanne, being the gardener that she is, we said, "Oh, hey, how many tomato plants should we plant here?" She thought about it for a minute, surveyed the land, walked around on it. She came back, she said, 72 tomato plants. Lori and I, we didn't know. We were like 22, 23 years old. Okay, 72 tomato plants. All right. So we get 72 tomato plants. And we borrowed my dad's rototiller, which, by the way, Joanne at this time is 60 years old. And we had to arm wrestle her to get the rototiller away from her because she like that. It was very funny. You know, here she is about this tall, and the rototiller is bigger than she is. So the long story short of this is when the 72 tomato plants all grew up and produced tomatoes, we didn't know what to do with all of them. We made ketchup, we made salsa, we made spaghetti sauce, we threw tomatoes at one another, we gave them away, we could not get rid of them. But the best part is that Joanne was involved in all of that. And it's just one of those memories that I have of her like so many others.
It's a very hot mic, so don't get too close to it.
I have a daughter who just turned 16 this year, and I got to sign for her driver's license. My mother could not sign for my driver's license because, well, men make the money. But my mother said, I manage every dime in our house. We'd have no money if it weren't for me. But they wouldn't let her sign. But that just let me know she fought for that, and it sort of let me know when I signed for Josie's driver's license, it was like, wow, this is something she did. So.
So I'm one of the many nephews. I have a lot of memories of my Aunt Joanne, and they were varied from when she gave me a job working at the Census Bureau to just validate names, but then she made me start doing the math on the forms to make sure they were right. To the debates that we had, we didn't actually see eye to eye on all issues, political or otherwise, but she always took the time out to explain why I was wrong. And, yep. And I do appreciate that. But one of the memories that really, really sticks with me, we were, my brothers and I were staying at my Aunt Joanne and Uncle Jim's house for a protracted period of time. My mother was actually in the hospital. And I remember running through the house. My older brother had just called me a name. And I was chasing him down, as you did with your brothers. And she caught me as I went through the kitchen and asked me what was going on. And I said, Mike just called me a name. And I said, and I was a little bit rougher than Mike. And she said, what was that? I said, well, he called me a woman. Well, you can kind of guess where that went. So about an hour later, when I was allowed to get back up after the lecture to explain why that was a compliment and nothing else, I did realize that my Aunt Joanne was a person that wanted me to understand a lot of things. And I miss her. Thank you.
Hi, most of you don't know me, but my name's Cole, and she was my great Aunt Joanne, and when she passed away, I was there with her, and it was a grieving time. But before that, she used to call me like every day before I went, and like after I went to school, not mostly. And she would tell me these jokes that were kind of corny, but I liked them. One of the jokes was, what goes around a button? And I know most of you know this one, but she said a billy goat. And so when I was going down, I was taking a car trip with her, and I had just got this new app on my Kindle, and it was Best Corny Jokes. And I started sharing them with her, and she read one, and it turned out to be one of her favorite ones was What Has Four Wheels and Flies, and it was a garbage truck. And, yeah. And she would always tell jokes like that, and all in all, she was just a very, very good person.
Sorry. My name is Jean Rudek, and this was my Aunt Joanne and my mother's sister, Dorothy. She touched me in so many ways I can't even begin. In fact, tonight when I was saying hi to old faces and people's names I couldn't remember, and I'd be like, but gosh, but you look familiar to me. And it was because of her, the things that she did. I can remember going down, my son would say, we were looking at some of the videotapes and saying how she was down there with the escort shirt on. I said, I did that. And he's like, you did what? And I said, I did that. I said, she would be in front of me, and I said, I'm sure I'm like right back there somewhere. And there I'd be, and he'd like, you did? And I'm like, yeah, I did. And I got to thinking about all the lives she's touched and the things she's done. And it's right. She did such unselfish things. She thought of other people before she thought of herself, ever. She gave relentlessly, and I'll never forget that that's how she felt about everybody, that everybody was worth something. It didn't matter who you were, where you were in life. If you had lots of money, little money, some money, you were important. And I will take that for the rest of my life, and I hope I can share that and give on to everyone and let you know how much I loved her so much. The camping trips, the things that we would do as kids, the lesson like my brother just said about, calling me a woman. Was that really bad? No, that was probably one of the best things you could be called. And why? I mean, she wouldn't just tell you an answer. She would explain it, why it was something. And if you didn't get it the first time, she'd say it again. And then her knowing, we sat back and listened to all the things that she had in life, and having been a part of it, sometimes you get caught up and you forget how much they really gave. And I said, I feel like I've wasted my life. And I can remember the last few hours with her family, and I was there with them, with my aunt, with my mom, and her daughters. And I kept thinking, you have to be strong for her, because I don't want to go alone. And I can remember thinking what she would say to me as a Jean, because I would say, and I just don't want to say goodbye. And what she would say to me is, don't say goodbye, carry on for me. And that's what I remember. Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Art Gentry, I'm Laura's son. 3 years ago I made the hardest decision of my life, and you'd think it was joining the Marine Corps, but no, I was telling my grandmother I was joining the Marine Corps. So about 3 years ago around this time, I decided it was time to fly up here and let her know. I didn't want to tell her over the phone, I didn't want to write her a letter, I wanted to let her know exactly what I was doing. And Jim was there, Judy was there, I think the rest of the justices were there as well, and I said, well, why did you come up here? I mean, you just came up here out of the blue, and I said, well, I'm joining the Marine Corps. Figured my grandfather worked on jets, why not me? I figured that'd make her proud. And last night I found an awesome picture of him. Worked on a jet, and it's basically the beginning of the jets that I'm working on right now. But Joe sent me a care package, and if you've been in the military before, the care package is the best thing you can get, especially around Christmas time, and Joe always sent the best Christmas presents. Yeah, she sent checks, that's great and all, but she always sent cool calendars, toys, stuff like that. Well, she sent me an activist calendar, and my drill instructor just snatched that out of my hand the first thing he saw it. So I wrote Joe a letter saying, you sent me all these cool gifts, but I don't get any of them. My drill instructor took it. She didn't understand why. So she sent me a letter saying she was going to write my congressman to get my calendar back. I'm like, Joe, come on now. I'm in boot camp. Don't make it any worse for me than you need to make it. All right? Let me just get through this thing alive. But the greatest moment of boot camp was being out there, not just seeing like 50 of my friends that were there, but seeing my grandma and my Aunt Carol. And I knew from that moment she was proud of me. And that was the hardest decision I ever made, just looking her dead in the eye and telling her I was joining the Marine Corps. Not going to school to do this, to be a lawyer, a teacher, anything like that, but joining the Marine Corps, putting myself in danger. I love her. I miss her. And the last time I saw her was on the drill field at boot camp, and just the hug she gave me was just, it was so pure. It was the best hug I've ever gotten from her. Any better hug than anybody could ever have. It was my best moment, being taken from a civilian, beaten down, made into something new. And Joe was so proud of me. I'm happy to be here for her today. Thank you.
Hear me from there? I'm Dorothy Daley Uebelhoer, Joan Daley Uebelhoer's sister. Dort, she called me. Thank you. Okay. I was the one that knew her when she never made waves and that she was perfect. And my mother and father always said, be like Joanne. Yeah, sure. But she was always good to me. She broke me into things in life, and I always laughed because she came. I had been at camp, and my mother was from the area that never explained anything biological to you. It just became as a surprise when things happened. And I started womanhood. While I was at camp, I had no idea what it was. And when I got home, my mother said, you explain to her. And being the biology major, she sat down and explained all these things to me. And the only thing I got from it was, this is going to happen to you till you're 45. And I thought, I'll be dead by 45. I can't go on like this. But she was always there to help me through different times. And she was, we had jokes together. We sang together. We knew all the World War I songs. We always sang them while we did our dishes at home from that. And she talked, Joan Dale talked about the fact that when my father had to buy an appliance, and I said, Dad, you bought a refrigerator. Why didn't you get a toaster or something small? And he said, I never thought of that. But we had it, and it was times. And maybe you've heard her story, because people call her Joan, because it's spelled Joan. Whenever we go to a doctor's office or to the labs to get blood drawn, and then she'd say, I was born during the Depression, and they charge by the letter. My mother didn't have enough, so I only got Joan. And people would repeat these. I said, they're going to tell everybody else and make themselves look like an idiot. But she was always there for me. And she's there for your things that you all believe in and that we want, the changes. And I miss her and miss her now. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Judy, Jim's wife, and I came into this family like 20 years ago, and it's really been a wonderful experience. But as Joanne was dying, Jessica, our daughter in Pennsylvania, was trying to make it out, trying to be there to see her again and talk with her. And so we were conversing. It's a 7-hour trip, and Jessica said, so anyway, I called her, and I said, this is reminiscent of the opposite of life. Life is a circle, and there was a time when Jessica was in labor for her first child. She was having a home birth, and I was supposed to be there. So she called and said, it's time, and I jumped in the car, and I'm racing east to see my new baby born, and conversely, here she was heading west to see the end of Joanne's life. And indeed, life is a circle. We have another grandchild that just turned 1 yesterday, and Luna, that's our third granddaughter. We have 3 grandsons. But it's just amazing to think how, as the circle of life goes on, and we've got these little girls that will have learned from their mothers and their grandmothers, and this great grandmother, this great and wonderful grandmother, Joanne, and they'll carry on also. So it's an exciting time to see the circle of life. And there at the end, Joanne was passing, and the loved ones were there by her. Some of the loved ones. And there was just this immense gratitude toward Patty and all that she had done, what she had given up because she had such a great love for her mother. And I remember saying, oh, you know, Joanne did it right. She raised you kids right. Jim said, no, she raised us left. And there was mention, too, of, you know, the return, then the circle of life again, you know, how she was raised in the faith and then departed, as we all know, and then here she came back to it at the end. And, you know, in my heart, I'm just really grateful that I'm going to get to see her again. And I just thank you for your part in this wonderful woman's life and how it carries on and on. Thank you.
our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we let them, and we help them in return. Well, I don't know if I believe that's true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes a sun, like a stream that meets our favorite boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, because we knew her, we have been changed for good.
Thank you. Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Joanne and family. Terry did a great job of bringing Sister Space into the room. And my pleasure is to help us talk a little bit about the big life Joanne lived in our big community. So I want to open my statements by first offering our community's collective condolences to Joanne's sister Dort and to Joanne's children, Carol, Jim, Mart, Lori, Pat, and your partners, and children and grandchildren. I know it wasn't always easy to share your mom with the big community she chose. I know there were times you were in the spotlight and didn't want to be. And I know that there were those times she was at a political event rather than a school event. You made compromises so that each of us could have a piece of Joanne. And I hope you find some sense of comfort and community today. You capably took care of Joanne, coordinated her care, helped her live and die as comfortably as possible in her own home as she wished. No small task. Our hearts have been with you these last weeks and months, and certainly in Joanne's last days and hours. And we really appreciate and love all of you. Our sympathies. Carol said at one point in planning this memorial that a couple hours wouldn't be enough. We really needed a week-long retreat. So I don't know who all's in, but the passing of Joan Daley Uebelhoer really marks the end of an era in Fort Wayne in many ways. She organized and agitated and involved every one of us, family and friends, in important work to better our community, our world, and ourselves. Mayor Tom Henry has a special proclamation in honor of Joanne's memory today, and then I'll ask Claudia Davis to bring Sister Space back again with the first song that you have words for. Mayor Henry, would you please read your proclamation?
Good afternoon. Thank you, first of all, for allowing me to join with you for a few minutes today and to read a proclamation on Joanne's behalf. For those of you who may not have heard, proclamations are very important to me, and I don't do a lot of them personally. We give out a lot, but I don't do too many personally because I happen to think proclamations are very important to our community because they recognize a person or an organization or someone who has really stepped up for our community. They've made Fort Wayne just a a little bit better place to live, who've truly added the quality of life to our community. Certainly, Joanne was one of those people. I'm sure if my mother was here, I don't know how many of you know my mother, but she knew I was coming today, and she wished she could have been here as well. But she and Joanne were in Girl Scouts together. And my mother has a few stories about Joanne eating that dinner. And she has shared them with me. I would like to read the following proclamation. I do want to tell you every proclamation that I give, we record at Citizen Square in a database that's set aside just for proclamations. And I do that because months to years from now, if any of you wanted to, you can go back and find out who we honored today. And with that, whereas Joan Uebelhoer was a mighty force for progressive social change in Fort Wayne and indeed the world. As a participant in both formal and informal systems of social change, Joanne voted, participated, taught, sometimes agitated, and acted for the good of all, and consistently worked alongside the oppressed. And whereas Joanne dedicated her life to civil and human rights, for the poor, for women, for people of color, immigrants, gays and lesbians, and all marginalized people, Joanne consistently pushed our community to the next step in tolerance and acceptance of one another. Whereas Joanne worked diligently for peace in families, our community, and our world. And as an active member of the Fort Wayne Feminists, the Daybreak Children's Shelter, Fort Wayne Peace Action Coalition, the Center for Nonviolence, and to service to many nonprofits and organizations and boards in Fort Wayne, she added to the quality of life of our community. And whereas Joanne was actively and vehemently pro-life and pro-choice, and whereas she never hesitated to rock the boat or wade into turbulent waters, shake things up, and make all of us think more deeply, whether about mathematics or relationships with one another. And whereas she positively represented our community in many ways, including serving in public office at the U.S. Conference on Women in Dallas and the U.S. Conference on Women in Beijing, China. It is therefore that I, Thomas Henry, Mayor of the City of Fort Wayne, do hereby proclaim September 23rd, 2012, as Joanne Uebelhoer's Day in the City of Fort Wayne. Thank you.
Claudia, would you lead us in Chris Williamson's Lullaby? Lullaby was so often a part of Sister Space gatherings, and you'll find the lyrics. There are 3 songs we're asking you to participate in today. Lullaby is a very brief song, and if you would join Claudia for the 2nd and 3rd rounds of Lullaby, we'd appreciate it.
It's actually called
Like a Ship in the Harbor, yeah. Yes. But it is definitely a lullaby, and it's been used in many circumstances and instances to help women in our community. Being with a part of Joanne, I didn't want to be too close here. It was so live. So like I said, please join in. You don't have to wait for the second time through. Like a ship in the harbor, like a mother and child, like a light in the darkness, I'll hold you a while. we'll rock on the water. I'll cradle you deep and hold you while angels sing you to sleep. Like a ship in the harbor, like a mother and child, like a light in the darkness, I'll hold you a while. We'll rock on the water. I'll cradle you deep and hold you while angels sing you to sleep. Like a ship in the harbor, like a mother and child, like a light in the darkness, I'll hold you a while. We'll rock on the water. I'll cradle you deep and hold you while angels sing you to sleep. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie, and thanks to all of you. I'm actually a bit of a tweener in the Fort Wayne feminist community. I met Joanne when I was 16 or 17 as a Y-teens when she came to speak at a conference I attended. But I also know that for all of you, whether you have known Joanne for 40 or 50 or 70 years, or you met her last year, I know she touched you. The issues that sometimes divide us, age, race, class, sexual orientation, were sort of Joanne's social playground. I was lucky to have come of age steeped in a shared politic of a particular time: feminism, pacifism, work around rights of the poor, racial justice, and later LGBT rights. But whatever we were doing, Joanne was always right in the middle of things. When Joanne passed a couple weeks ago, Jimmy said he was putting together the obituary from a list of awards and lifetime achievements that Joanne had sort of put together. And we agreed the obituary would be about a half page. And in fact, Joanne's passing, she made news above the fold for the last time in her life on September 10th. Champion of women's rights dies. So few words for such big word. Work by a mighty woman. And just at the end of the article was a picture of smiling Joanne, and below that a headline that says, "Romney planning to keep key portions of the health law." Now I can only conclude that she went right to work performing miracles. Many of us have been part of Joanne's other newsmaker moments, family and friends, rallying for the resignation of a judge for his trolling comments when a woman was raped at a local bar. Joanne, the county auditor, making news when she and her displaced homemaker staff urged economic justice and that taxpayer funds only be deposited in financial institutions with affirmative action policies. Joanne made news many times around issues of reproductive rights, like the price of birth control and annual exams when she was director of Planned Parenthood. And Joanne kept reproductive rights in the news, in our consciousness, and discussion of abortion part of the public discourse for 40 years.
As the mayor mentioned, Joanne also made news very frequently below the fold because of her involvement in local nonprofits. She was part of many startup endeavors, and because of her clout and connections, they became local institutions in some cases. As regional welfare director, Joanne was a newsmaker drawing public attention to crimes of neglect and abuse and interpersonal violence, and the legal judicial system that still hasn't stopped these horrors yet. She made news lots of times during Operation Rescue in the late 80s and early 90s. Operation Rescue sort of selected Fort Wayne to take siege here, and sit-ins at the abortion clinic were intended to close the doors. The Fort Wayne court battle, balancing free speech and access to women's health, was big. People were paying attention to it all over the country. And just as a reminder, as is always true in community, my guess is that some of us in this room were on either side of Webster Street during those years. Those Operation Rescue years were the years that my long friendship with Joanne was really cemented. I had 2 small children at home and found the street side activism, the courtroom, preparing press releases, the task list, exhilarating and exhausting. I asked Joanne, how did you do it with 5 at home? She assured me I could only keep up with her if I limited my sleeping hours to between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., right? But the truth is, nobody could keep up with Joanne, nobody. There were so many causes, so many political engagements, so many organizations, so many friends, fellow activists, sisters on the street, so many power lunches, strategy sessions over a Diet Coke, solving the world's problems after a coffee house at Zoli's, or caissons any old summer Friday night, and if we were lucky, over a cold beer on a beach somewhere in the world. Joanne did a mighty lot of newsmaking in her life. And beyond the newsmaking, as Joan Daley mentioned, she was an extraordinary teacher. She taught elementary school, high school, IPFW Women's Studies from inception, and literally taught thousands of us how to see the world. A woman of mighty impact indeed. As fierce as she was, she could also be a marshmallow. She could send the kindest, most encouraging handwritten note, and she could be a downright chicken shit sometimes in interpersonal challenges. She was vulnerable and uncertain as any of us, and sometimes gave that away too. She was an avid gardener, an avid reader, a lifelong learner. She was honing her calculus skills as she turned the corner on 80. And she was also open to what she could learn from each of us. She was a mighty orator, a mighty role model, a mighty community leader, and a mighty friend. Joanne loved life, and she hated to leave this earth. Joan Daley Uebelhoer was a mighty force and will be mightily missed. Now you get a turn in a moment. But before we do that, I want to just bring you a couple of posts from people who were unable to be here. She was absolutely my mentor. When no police officers looked like me, she helped me survive. From Dottie Davis. I can never thank her enough. Joan Uebelhoer, troublemaker extraordinaire. She's finally able to sit down next to Elizabeth Cady Stanton. An extraordinary woman full of life, wisdom, and passion. My heart is heavy. Joanne was the first person who told me I could be anything I wanted. What an amazing lady and a treasure in our community. She impacted the life of every woman in Fort Wayne, and I would argue every person in Fort Wayne and beyond. I'll never forget the forget-me-nots, and I'll never see them without thinking of Joanne. Her first campaign, she passed out forget-me-not packets. Joanne changed my life. May her spirit transcend in peace. I'd like to ask for a few minutes of community shout-outs, I'm going to call them. Stand and speak loudly in your best Joanne-empowered voice. And give us something she taught you, something Joanne taught you. Just shout it out. Indeed. Anybody else? Something Joanne taught you? Activism. Mm-hmm.
How to dissect a worm on a picnic. Love. Which saint day it was out front. Especially for us young Catholics. Be a proud recovery Catholic. How to iron.
How to iron it. How to drive.
Always question authority.
Always. Okay, this one's maybe tougher. What did you love most about Joanne?
Sense of humor.
Attitude.
Honesty. Bravery. Forthrightness. Everything. She taught women that had one brush to get half price off of their man.
Yeah, Dave didn't hear it, Nita. She believed that one-breasted women should get half-price mammograms.
But we don't.
But you don't, that's right. She hasn't accomplished that yet, but we're working on it.
Right, but we still pay
So, so here's a little quick one. What kind of flower do you think she'd be? I'm thinking a cactus. Yeah, a flowering cactus, absolutely. The mighty force that was Joan Daley Uebelhoer touched so many so deeply. And ultimately what we hold as community is a river of grief. And Joanne would want us to hold it today together and move forward from here. John and Beth, will you lead us in O River? The words are also in your program.
Leslie put performer after our name, so I don't know if we can handle the pressure here. Can we do it? Okay. So we're going to do River then, are we first? Okay, I'm just going to sing. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask you to sing with me. I'll sing through the chorus first and then the first verse, and then I'm going to ask you to join me on "O River" the next time it comes around. As Joan would say, next time it comes around, sing it with me. This is for you, Joanne. Oh, river, take it on down, take it on down, take it on down. Oh, river, take it on down. Take it on down to the sea. Sometime I will fly so high that I will walk barefoot on the sky. Oh, river, take it on down. Take it on down. Take it on down. Oh, river, take it on down. Take it on down to the sea. Someday I will dance so fast the future will start looking like the past. Oh, river, take it on down. Take it on down. Take it on down. Oh, river, take it on down. Take it on down to the sea. Someday I will sing so high the birds will look down and wonder why. Oh, river, take it on down. Take it on down. Take it on down. Oh, river, take it on down. Take it on down to the sea. Here we are to celebrate love, family gathered around. In the time that war is raging, love is so profound. Oh, river, take it on down. Take it on down. Take it on down. Oh, river, take it on down. Take it on down to the sea. Oh, river, take it on down. Take it on down. Take it on down. Oh, river, take it on down. Take it on down to the sea.
Thanks, pals. Sorry to confuse you with the program there. Got to keep you on your toes, right? And what's left after we allow the grief to wash away is a community and friendships so much stronger for Joanne having lived here and touched our lives. So this is an opportunity for community recollections. Communities speak out. And we need to set a couple rules. Brevity. She was mighty and we are many. So a minute or two, and if you would, please say your name before you offer your comments. I know there are several who have planned comments, and this is the moment for everybody to just take a minute and offer our community your thoughts about Joanne.
One of the things that I learned from Joanne was try to be first. I'm going to read this because if I don't, I'm going to end up blubbering. I may accomplish that anyway. First, I extend my deepest sympathies to Dort, Carol, Jim, Martha, Lori, and Pat, and their kin. Losing a parent is tough. I feel their pain as we all do here today. Leslie has asked that we keep our remarks brief. Well, wish me luck. I will mention the first time and the last time that I saw Joanne. Stop that. Joanne used to tell me, stop crying, you big baby. The first time she told me that was when she was doing Elizabeth Cady Stanton for our group, and she had me in tears. Yeah, all right. Okay, the first time was in the late 60s when a good friend of hers and mine, Ann Raber, and I had a fledgling enterprise we called the Group. It never became more than a fledgling enterprise, unfortunately. Our office in the Fairfield Manor consists of a large carpeted room, ideal for running encounter groups, sensitivity groups, tea groups, which at that time were popular on the West Coast, but certainly not here in staid Fort Wayne. This was the time of the birth of feminism in Fort Wayne with our good friend and compañera, Joan Daley Uebelhoer, at the helm, or the rudder. Anyway, she was steering the ship. She scared the hell out of me. Well, it seemed a good idea, she thought, for these feminists to send their partners, husbands, spouses, or significant others to be sensitized to the women's movement. And I, like a dumbass, reluctantly agreed to facilitate a men's group, which lasted, at best, a half a dozen sessions. Because none of us, including myself, knew what the hell these women expected of us. While we men were scratching our heads and our asses, pondering this question, Joanne and the feminist movement grew. And it grew. And it grew. Many of you in this room were a part of this movement. And if you haven't heard your mothers or your grandmothers speak fondly of it, or curse it, depending on which side of the political divide you were, the last time I saw Joanne was when I picked her up at her home, just a couple of weeks before she died. And we joined a dozen others down the road from Channel 33 where we protested a stupid NBC show that had just begun, which we believe promoted war. Any of you see that show? Well, I hope not too many, because it was awful. Well, here's the good news. My regret is she never learned. She never learned that we succeeded. NBC wound up canceling the show because Joanne was out there. Hey, we won, Joanne. Finally, we won. This was her last protest on Earth. But my guess is she's already begun raising hell up there. I loved her as many of you loved her. They say that a person continues to live through the stories people tell about them. I expect Joanne will be with us for many, many years to come. Yeah, we can be thankful for that, and we can be thankful for her. Be seen, you dear friend, but not too soon, I hope.
I thought I would sort of add to the long and short of it. Joanne and I had a couple of things, more than a couple of things in common, and one of the issues we dealt with was keeping it short. We were able to do it this way, but not this way. So I'm going to try and just do two stories. One is the origin of the feminist movement. I got to give you a little bit of history in honor of Joanne, but it was in 1971 when there was a women's studies program, and I forgot what the real name of it was, at the First Wayne Street United Methodist Church under the auspices of the Freedom School. I think, okay, I've lost his name. He was just sitting there. Who was it? Terry Doran School, okay. And we gathered together, and I look across the room, and how many of us went to the First Wayne Street United Methodist Church? Okay, Alice, who was Alice Scott there, was one of our 4 leaders. And it was Alice and Diane Holman and, come on, Alice, Rosalie, and Dee Marquardt. And the one story I remember from that was Diane Holman, when you were, as I heard it, when you were planning when you were going to meet, said, well, let me see, Monday I do the floors, Tuesday I do, laundry, Thursday I do, we were into housewifing then, a big time. Out of that, our last meeting in May of 71, 72, whatever, came the birth of the Fort Wayne Feminist. All right, I'm going to tell 3 stories. After that, or during that, who remembers the Crescio? All right, so we went, and that was still, for some of us Jews, a little awkward, but we met someplace with Catholics at a Crescio. And amongst the many heavy, important decisions we had to make was what to call down there. And we came upon the word, and I think, Sue, you helped coined it, reality. Yes? And then the next day when the priest gave a speech, and he kept talking about, not having been part of our meeting the night before, the importance of reality. So he brought down the house, never did know what it was that hit him. And then one more story to take the personal to the political. Many things Joanne has done for many people, but one of the things she did for me was she took me on my first camping trip. And we went to Chain of Lakes, and we had a pop-up and a tent. And Joanne and I had the pop-up, and I think there were 11 of the kids who had the tent. And as I recall, there was a mosquito nest in the tent, and we just said, run, 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 run. And it rained, rain, 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 and there were her kids and my kids and some nieces and some neighbors. And, in this room are all the parents of all those 11 kids that went there. And it would rain, and we would be in the car making sandwiches, and it was a different kind of drive-in. The kids would come to the window of our car, and we would throw out the sandwiches. And we would sit around the campfire at night, and the skunks would march through the campground. And we noticed skunk power. And I think some of you men in the room have experienced that skunk power. Mess with us, and we make a stink.
Hard act to follow. I'm Louise Jackson, the CEO of the Fort Wayne Women's Bureau. We're here to say something in remembrance of Joanne. It's not an easy task to just salute her life and what she accomplished for herself, for her many students, for her friends, for her fellow conspirators, and for her family, let alone to give some credence to what she suggested to the rest of us. A friend of the Women's Bureau since its establishment in the 70s and continues to resonate strong today. It's an operation that serves the very essence of womanhood and at the same time provides a variety of options for the unfortunate among us. Peace, love, and charity were hallmarks of Joanne's message. Oh, I should also mention humor. You could say it was her approach or her attitude, but you couldn't escape her effervescent laugh in person or over the phone. Someone suggested at one point should we invite a man onto the Women's Bureau board? Her response was, what would they do? On behalf of the board of directors, staff, and the women we serve, we thank you for sharing your mother with us for so many years. Her memory will live on through our Her Story library for generations to come. Thank you.
I'm Carol Butler, and Leslie suggested that I might read this letter, so I'll go real fast to keep my 2 minutes. This letter was addressed to Carol Uebelhoer and to the family of Joan Daley Uebelhoer, dated September 18. I begin this letter by offering my sincere condolences to the Uebelhoer family. Joan Uebelhoer was a role model and a guiding light to so many women and men in our community, and she will be greatly missed. Community Friends of Women's Studies was created in 2005 to support IPFW Women's Studies program and the students enrolled in the Women's Studies program. Over the years, several initiatives have been sustained, including Education Means Everything grant, the Linda C. Fox Merit Scholarship, and the Sharon Epperson Award. Although the IPFW Joan Daley Uebelhoer Award was established many years ago at IPFW, it had remained a relatively symbolic award, and it includes a bullhorn to speak out, just as Joanne did. The Community Friends of Women's Studies Board of Directors wanted to honor Joan Uebelhoer and to demonstrate the organization's commitment to what the Joan Uebelhoer Award stands for: excellence in scholarship, a commitment to social justice, and activism on behalf of women. As a result, on February 13, 2012, the Community Friends of Women's Studies Board of Directors added a cash award of $500 to the Joan Daley Uebelhoer Award. On April 21, at the College of Arts and Sciences Honors Banquet, Dr. Janet Badia presented the Community Friends-sponsored Joan Daley Uebelhoer Award to Vanessa Samsel. Since graduating in May 2012, Vanessa has decided to continue her activism by serving on the Community Friends of Women's Studies Board of Directors. She cited how much the award meant to her and how she wanted to pay back, a fitting tribute to Joanne. Although Joanne did not receive this letter to know how much she meant to those she inspired and who follow in her footsteps, we hope that her family's sorrow will be lightened by this act of service on her behalf. Sincerely, Carol Butler, President.
Hi, my name is Elvia Para. I am one of the Koreans that worked in the auditor's office for 8 years. I'm not Korean, but that's what they asked Joanne, if I was Korean. And I just want to say I would not be what I am today had it not been Joanne's opportunity that she gave me 30 years ago. She was a great boss, she was a friend, and she was a great leader. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Win Moses.
And Joanne and I campaigned together in 1974. I still have in my political collection some old seeds of forget-me-nots. That's how long we go back, and I'll add this to it. But I thought I'd step. I didn't really intend to speak today at all, but it did not escape my notice that anybody in public office who served during that time when Joanne had really strong opinions, and that was all the time, is not here except me. So in a short commentary, I thought I'd tell you one public act, one major thing that happened that was really pushed, and it probably would not have happened without Joanne. And that was when I became mayor. She helped me in 1979 and came in 1980, and we'd have lunches, about every 6 months. Whenever I felt like getting beat up, it was okay. And it was always helpful. She always moved forward. But one of the things that she brought up and wanted was she wanted women in the combat division of the fire department. She wanted them actively in the stations, that people should be equal, that we had many that could do that. I said, Joanne, that's kind of hard. I mean, some of the fire department thinks that that's in the Constitution that it's only men, and it's the foundation of democracy, and why they don't. I said, but we'd have lunch and she'd bring it up again, and we'd have lunch and she'd bring it up louder, and she was right, and I didn't have any doubt about that, and so I announced that we were going to do this, and that caused a lot of consternation in the fire department, as you might imagine, and we had to make some arrangements in the buildings. We had to change the sleeping arrangements and some of the rest, and some of the kitchens and all those things, and got it through city council, and had a class, and had a wonderful class of men and women in the training program. We had one lady we advertised on the radio. You probably don't remember it, but one lady who'd come over as a wife from I think it was Uganda at the time. Married a sailor, came to Indiana. He left her. She was single. She heard on the radio that there were in fact opportunities for women to become firefighters. She came to the class. She could jump over those fences faster than anybody. I mean, she could pull 125 pounds. She'd go out. Turns out in the fields of Uganda with nothing but big barrels to cook in, and had to really survive. She did a beautiful job, and she's clearly one of the best. And we're ready. And finally comes the day everything's constructed, and the fire department is to be integrated entirely by women. And it was not a problem. We went well. We had a little ceremony and things, and we're doing fine until I come back to the office. And a most unusual thing happened that I did not expect. My office is full of about 50 to 60 women. I said, what? And these were not Joanne's friends. And I said, what are you doing here? We're the wives. Yes, I had not thought about that. I called Joanne and said, I have a problem that I hadn't anticipated here. And she said, it'll work out fine, Win. Trust me. Click. Goodbye. She was wonderful. God bless her.
I'm Terry Warman. I was up there a moment ago. I just wanted you guys to know, because I left Fort Wayne in 89 and ended up in Chicago, and almost immediately started working with the Illinois Pro-Choice Alliance. Funny that. What was interesting, though, and I want you guys to know that both in the work that we did in Chicago, because, Randall Terry found us, and in Chicago there are many, many, many clinics. And so we literally, on any given Saturday, were covering 5 and 6, and we had the war room, and we had the, all of the charts and things. But it was interesting that Chicago had heard about Fort Wayne. And when I went elsewhere and talked about what we had done, they knew about Fort Wayne. They also knew about remember the wall we built, right, with Joanne? And when I said that, I am who I am because of Joanne, it truly is true. And that my activism on pro-choice issues was very much based on very cold, very windy days that Joanne and I, many times, it was the two of us, and when I was the one that yelled, I learned the saint days with Joanne, because she knew it pissed off the pro-choice, or the pro-life folks, right, the anti-choice people. So she would go, Terry, do you know which Saints' Day it is? No, Joanne, I'm not Catholic. Okay, well, and she'd blurt it out, and she'd go through it all and just make them all mad. But those cold winter days, I had such a privilege to walk up and down that street with that woman. My feminism really did start with her and Harriet and everybody, but she really instilled in me what I took to Chicago, and I can tell you that Randall, Terry, and none of them ever took Chicago as well, because we brought our lessons there. And thank you, Joanne, for teaching them to me.
Hi, I'm Judy Hollander, and I'm in the category of envelope stuffer. I've been around a long time. When you're an envelope stuffer, you can keep your energy for many, many campaigns. Well, I don't have anything really heartfelt or reverent to say. I feel compelled, however, to share something that Jimmy may remember. I was an emergency room nurse at St. Joe on night shift for a short while, thank goodness. And I was working, and I kept hearing this voice that sounded really familiar from on the other side of the curtain. And I at that moment, I stuck my head in, and I saw more than I wanted to. Joanne had been politicking. She'd been out campaigning in some suburb, and she got bit by a dog on her butt. And you know, it's one of these things that can be very serious, but it is a wonderful story. And it did not keep her down. And so I just wanted to share that.
Hi, my name is Dee McKinley, and I'm a former director of Metro Human Relations Commission. And Joanne, Liz Dobenis, and Dee McKinley were three women the city really couldn't handle. We did so many things that people didn't think that we would do. Joanne would end up with me down on Pontiac Street, and I would end up with her down on Wells Street, and they were wondering what we were doing. But we were making a change in the city of Fort Wayne. There were so many things that people said we couldn't do it. All they had to say to us was, you can't do it. And we showed them we could do it. And we went and did that. One of the things I truly remember was when I had the courage to run for public office, county council. She said, girl, you need to go down there and put some color on that board. So if nothing else, she said, you can do it, and I know you can do it. And I said, I procrastinated a little bit. So she called me and said, okay, it's the last time I'm call you and tell you, get down there, get registered, you're going to run, and you're going to win. And I mean, do it right now. Click. She liked to click you. I mean, she really likes to hang the phone up, give you a directive, and that's it. It's as if though you're going to do it. And we did it. It was nothing like it. And I thank God so much that I had an opportunity to be in her life and have her in my life. It's because of her that I raise hell everywhere I go. Thank you.
Heard many stories recently, the past couple of weeks, about her experience with that. Also, she was very close friends with one of my aunts, Deanna Marquardt, who was mentioned earlier tonight. So I'm here giving my condolences as far as Diana goes, or Dee goes. And she also helped me find my path in life. You know, women's studies was my major for a while, and then I became a social worker, and now working for Planned Parenthood. It feels like I've come full circle. So anyhow, I do have a story that Deanna has sent to me, so I'm giving you a moment here. Technology. In the early days of the Fort Wayne Feminist, I remember meeting Joanne for lunch in the cafeteria at Bishop Luers, where she was teaching. As usual, our conversation ranged over many topics, and somehow it came up that she had received a small inheritance from an aunt who had died recently. Instead of using the money to make a major one-time purchase, say a piece of furniture, a down payment on a car, Joanne and Jim decided to nickel and dime it away. She said by picking up the tab when they went out for meals or drinks with friends. She told me about this merely as an experience worth remarking. She said they had found having the wherewithal to be generous with people they cared about was even more satisfying than they had expected. This conversation from nearly 40 years ago continues to replay in my memory at opportune times, and thus still influences my own decisions about money. Joanne was always teaching, whether she considered this feature of her nature a blessing or a curse or both, I do not know. I do know she put it to work with intention. In doing so, she brought depth to understanding matters of politics, provided a model for living with heartbreak, and, among countless of other lessons, illuminated many places money occupies in our lives. Deanna Marquardt.
I'm Rosemary Bosselman, and my experience with Joanne was over many years. I was raised in a family situation and in a religion where we were not allowed to talk back or we were not allowed to question. And I also was in a marriage for many years that was both physical and emotionally abusive. And when I was 29 years old, I decided maybe there was a better life for me than that. And I came to Fort Wayne, Indiana, not knowing anyone. There were 3 women that were the most influential in my life. One is my mother that's in heaven with Joanne right now. Joan Uebelhoer was the other, and there's another woman in this room that is with us physically. When I came to town, I saw this activism and met Joanne and met these women that were so dynamic. And at that time, I really kind of sat back. I didn't have a voice. I didn't have the confidence to speak out, to share my opinions. And as I observed Joanne and these other women, I gained a new confidence in myself. And over the years of knowing her, I've thought back of all the gifts that she gave me, but the gift that she gave me that was more rewarding than any was the belief that my voice was important and that I had a right to express that voice. And I think that's what she gave to all of us, regardless of what our opinions were, our religion was, our political affiliation, that she encouraged us to express our voice. And so I'm grateful to her for that.
Hi, I'm Pat Deal, and I was in the early 80s the president of Northeast Indiana Now. And as a result of that and a ERA rally that we had that I was in charge of starting, that's when I met Mary Kay Blakely, Harriet Miller, Cozy Simon, a whole bunch. Actually, each one of them told me somebody else to call. And so I got the most wonderful list of feminist women that I didn't even know existed because I'd never done anything like this. And Joanne was, as everybody has said, such a teacher, only she didn't say, I want you to learn this. But she taught by example, she exhorted, she made me into one of those activists who worked at the clinic on and off. One of the things she told me was, they're going to try to goad you. Don't interact with them. Don't argue with them. And one day when I arrived, there were a bunch of them that were circling, walking and circling on the sidewalk, and they were singing Amazing Grace. And I thought, how dare they take a song that I believed in very much in my faith and make it seem that none of the rest of us have a faith. So I joined their circle. I didn't introduce myself to anybody. I just joined their circle. I started harmonizing with what they were doing. And they said, "We're so glad you're here." I said, "So am I. I'm one of the escorts." And I went over and helped somebody. Joanne, I believe, was there, and she got a big laugh out of that. One of the things that I want to tell you today is from my own personal experience just almost exactly 2 years ago. Joanne is here. She is having a mighty good time. She is, if you thought she was strong and tireless before, she doesn't have her body and her mind to slow her down. She will interact with you. If you miss her, tell her that. Tell her that you love her, especially to your family. You may, if you become more sensitive to strange little things that are happening, whether it's in nature, like the bushes around our house, the flowers around our house that were always this high are now this high and this big. And I found out it's because my sweet Mary Lee is blessing them. And I'm learning to become even deeper, going in deeper spiritually in meditation. And I'm learning that she's able to communicate with me. I shared with Carol that one day I told her I was very sad because she didn't have a body to hold hands with me anymore, and I missed, because we used to love to do that. And I felt a warmth in my hands immediately. A couple of days later, I felt that same warmth in my mouth, and I said, on my lips, and I said, "Are you kissing me?" And it was like, kiss, 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 kiss. So Joanne is absolutely alive. She's adoring everything all of you are saying, and she will not intrude on you, but if you talk to her and invite her in, she will be very present with you.
Good afternoon. My name is Cheryl Spieth Gardner. I'm here today to, first thing, I wish we could bottle Joanne's heart and sell it, because if we could, Fort Wayne Feminists would make a mint. That's the first thing. And I want to tell you how much I learned about heart from Joanne. I'm a woman who grew up, like many of you, like somebody before talked about Joanne talked about Joanne growing up not making waves. Well, it wasn't until I was in my 40s that I found out I could make waves. Most of my matrilineal lineage goes back of women, strong women, who made a difference in their community, but always within the cultural norms. Joanne never was in the cultural norms when I knew her. I met her 20 years ago this month at a meeting, and same time I met Leslie Raymer, and I was shocked. I was with this woman at this meeting. I was dear and sweet and innocent at the time, and I was in this meeting, and this Joanne was fierce, she was determined, she wouldn't let go, she was like a bulldog, she was clear, she was concise, she was on these opponents' tail, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I didn't know whether I could, I left, I was in awe, I said, I want some of that, and I was scared to death, kind of, how it is. Anyway, I learned through different meetings with Joanne she's actually, yes, my sister's married to Jimmy. So, I saw Joanne from a little bit different perspective. Not a lot, but a little bit different. But I saw Joanne relentlessly through the years being exactly that, fierce, determined, always on it, never letting go. And one of my nieces, one of Joanne's granddaughters, asked me right after Joanne passed away, she said, do you think it's possible? We know her body died. But she left all those qualities, that quality of heart, you know, the strength, the determination, the courage, that passion. Could that live on? Do you think we could soak it in if we opened our hearts and our minds? Much the way Pat Deal talked, but a little bit differently. So I think it's true, and I would encourage you. She left us a legacy of fierce determination, of courage and strength, of great heart, great passion. All we have to do is open ourselves to receive some of that, more and more of it all the time. So back to that little, we don't have to bottle it. It's in the air. It's in the ethers. All we have to do is open up to accept it. So thank you, Joanne.
I promise this will be really short. And actually, I moved here at age 24, and for the last 40 years I've been saying, well, I grew up in Chicago, but then I moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and had to grow up all over again because the first one didn't take. Met Joanne, met the family. Love you all. I'm having such memories, I can't stand it. I just want to give you a tiny bit of history and a wish. On April 5th, 1955, Joanne was in an elementary school teaching math, and she put the date on the blackboard, 5/5/55. And she said to her fifth graders, "This is not going to happen again for 11 years. Let's all remember each other on June 6th, 1966. And little Tommy Hayhurst, as she called him, in her elementary school class, was there. And on July 7th, 1977, a whole bunch of us were in the auditor's office, and this huge floral bouquet comes in from Dr. Thomas Hayhurst. And it said, "Joanne, thinking of you." It happened again in 88, it happened again in 99, happened again in 10, and it's only going to happen once more in my lifetime on December 12th this year. Let's all remember each other.
Thank you all. This really is the moment to talk about the spirit, right? That's where some of the conversation went. And Joanne struggled with what's next. She was a committed Catholic who did a midlife 180 and became sort of an anti-theist with doubts, as she had been a Catholic with doubts. And she wasn't one to hide the journey. We're talking about it. During Thursday mornings on Webster Street, she would struggle right out there in front of everybody with that previously committed Catholic self and her contemporary pro-choice feminist self. And she would say, "I can hardly wait till we all die. I want to be there to see the look on their faces when they figure out there's no there there." Now, as many of you know, Joanne did not let go of a good joke easily. And I probably heard her say this 30 times, maybe 50 times. And finally, I challenged my sensei's logic. Now, Joanne, if you're there and you see them there, there's a there there. Damn you, Raymer! And the truth is, there are only a few things most of us know for sure, and this is one of mine. Wherever else Joanne's spirit may travel, I know she's there, and there, and there, and here, and there, and there, and here. We all have it. And may her spirit be traveling free. Carol, you have something you'd like to close with as well. May we all carry Joanne's life work forward. May her spirit continue to travel in peace.
This is only going to be about 20 minutes, so.
Into our world we commend our spirits. May the strength we have gained in this communal time sustain us as we resume the work and redo a little bit of it that is at hand. I love you all. Thanks for coming, and I know that Mother would love this too. Thank you.
Honoring the spirit of liberation theology, I'd like to ask everyone to exchange the peace with handshakes and hugs, and ask John and Beth to move us out of the room, and the drums will help move us out of the building. Thank you all so very much for being here. I Am Willing is the last song on your song sheet, and please be part of it.
Please sing with us. I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who come before us. So lift me up to the light of change. There is hurting in my family. There is sorrow in my town. There is panic all across the nation. There is wailing the whole world round. May the children see more clearly. May the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though it burns our eyes. One last one. I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors who come before us. So lift me up to the light of change.